damas y caballeros, bienvenidos a otro episodio de ATSFE BW. Hoy tengo el placer de hablar del juego Legión del Eje, División Azul, and that's enough of that. So, welcome to another episode of ATSFE Battlefield Walkaround. If you're a Spaniard watching, I apologize. That was the best bad Spaniard accent I could do. So, moving on to more serious matters, let's take a look at the module. This is a classic module designed by Devin, the OG Heinle. I always wonder if people who are wargamers know what OG means. Maybe they do. In case you don't, it means original gangster. So there you go. He is, he's, as the name implies, he's old school from back in the day. I believe this is his first design, and I believe he's also gone on to design other things. But it's cool. He's still involved with the ATS community. We've asked him some questions about the module. We're in fact supposed to interview him for the On the Rocks podcast. So it's cool to have someone who's from back in the day who's still around in the community. I am going to look at the first edition of this particular module called Axis Legion, Spanish Division Azul on the Eastern Front. There's a second edition called Spanish Blue Division, Eastern Front 1941. The main difference is going to be the map. The new version has a winterized map. If you like to have your maps look nice and white because it's snowing out, you got that action going on. The winterized map is also going to be the new glossy cardstock deal. So if you prefer that, it's going to be map panels. Some people around here really hate map panels. I'm kind of like, it's fine. I like the glossy cardstock. Putting them together is less fun. The single map sheets are nice for that. So, plus minus. In the case of Axis Legion, you're going to one of the maps should just be so small, it should just be one map panel. And the other one I'm going to guess, because it's so long, is two? Maybe? Yeah, it surely must be two. But that shouldn't be too bad to connect together. Two should be easy to mate together. So that's that consideration if you're considering which one to get, if you have an option. That's that. The new version also supposedly has new counters. I looked at the VATS mod. Scott Eagles usually keeps the VATS modules or extensions, up to date with the newest maps, the newest versions of the counters, all that stuff. They look the same as the ones I have, so I don't think that's actually true. And Devin also said there were a couple scenarios, maybe 2 or 3 scenarios with some changes. I don't know how extensive those changes are. I'm definitely very curious to ask him about his process for that. It's always something I find very interesting when we interview him. And in the meantime, if you're really dying to know, we can. I'm sure someone in the Discord channel or on the internet somewhere we can compare notes and figure out how different the scenarios are. I think that's about it. So let's actually take a look at the maps. This one depicts the Volkhov River, a little piece of it, and then you've got the hill in the middle with Capitan Navarro. That is actually one of the differences. I checked the winterized map from the newer version on VATS, and there's a little hillock in the very middle, which is kind of cool. I know Ray loves his hillocks, but it makes it just a slightly higher point. The other map is really long. I'm going to see if I can fit that on my table. The only difference there I found was actually they used a hexside road instead of having it go through this building. Right there in G6, it goes through the building. The other one, on the newer version of the map, it goes around the building on the hex side. Very minor change. Maybe they didn't have, when this original version came out, they didn't actually have rules for hex side roads. Who knows? And so the maps in general, nothing too crazy. You have the river. It has like one special rule. That's about it. You have a lot of woods, you've got a lot of open plains, you've got some hills. There's worker settlements, which are basically just wooden buildings, except they have they create one less blind hex. So I guess they're too flat, which sounds like a miserable way to live, but there you go. That's Soviet Russia for you. Fields, roads, orchards. Yeah, it's a map. Those are those. Let's take a look at the counters. We've got these guys. So we'll zoom in if the camera decides to focus, which maybe it won't, but that's okay. There we go. So they got the nice little Spanish Legion symbol on all of them, and they actually followed German squad types fairly closely with 7.58s and 6.56s and all that good stuff. But that actually makes sense because the Spanish Legion, as I learned from the Battlefield Walkaround, was equipped by Germany completely. So they just used their weapons. That makes a great deal of sense. This one I just knocked out of the sprues as I was getting it ready to go. So here we have a bunch of vehicles, none of which we'll use. We'll go over that in a little bit. You have wagons, all of which you'll use. S-boats, I think all of which you'll use, at least 5 or 6. And then I really like these. Down here, you've got Spanish control markers for locations. And then up here, that's their symbol for courage, their medal, which that's a little bit of chrome, actually, I enjoy. Normally I don't care too much about that kind of thing, but I think that's pretty cool. Other than counters and maps, we of course have the actual Battlefield Walkaround, the piece of paper, as opposed to the video you are watching right now. This guy, it's a little booklet, 4 pages. It doesn't have designer's notes, but it does have a lot of historical notes, which I appreciate a great deal. I like to see why things are the way they are, either from a game perspective or from a historical perspective. Some other ATS modules aren't quite so forthcoming about either of those things, so yeah, I learned a lot. I learned about the Axis Legion, which is cool, or the Spanish Legion. There are not too many special rules. As mentioned, there's just the rule for the river, getting out of the rivers. You get winded if you have a heavy weapon, I believe. There's some hastily constructed log bunkers instead of real bunkers. There's one scenario with frostbite, and I'm sure Tony will love that. Winter camouflage. There's snow again in one scenario. And there's rules for wagons, but those are actually in the 4X rules these days, so that's really not necessary. And that's about it for the Battlefield Walkaround. Of course, you have scenarios. There are 8 scenario cards and 2 scenarios to a card. So you have, there are 4 scenario cards. 2 scenarios to a card, so you get 8 scenarios. And that it's interesting. The first 4 play on the smaller map, crossing the river, and then the second 4 play on the other side, on the big map, and the towns after you've crossed the river. And so there's a nice progression for the first 4 play on the first map, the second 4 play on the second map, and even though it's not a campaign, it's not connected or anything, it feels like there's this nice progression from one scenario leads chronologically to the next. And other ones do that too. Pork Chop Hill, for example, kind of does that, but it's not so obvious how one scenario would lead to the next, even though they're not actually, it's not like a campaign where what you do in one it will affect the next, although maybe someone somewhere will make that up eventually. But I like the logic of it is kind of nice. VATS actually has both sets of maps. I forgot to mention that. They have the winterized version and this version I have. So you get to pick your poison if you play on VATS. What do you need to play aside from what's in the box? Or what's in the bag, rather? You're going to need Russians, lots and lots of Russians, of course. And you'll need max 12 of the 4.36s, and 17 of the 5.47s. And there's some 6.48s, and of course leaders, crews, squad weapons, all that stuff. There's one scenario where you don't actually have enough 6.56 Spaniards to fill out the order of battle. I bought mine on Noble Knights, and they sent me 2 sheets, so I actually have enough for some reason. Also, the reason, if you're wondering why I have the old version, not the new version, is because they chopped the bottom of the counter sheet off, so they were selling out a Noble Knight for about $8 or $9, so I couldn't pass that up. Yeah. That's a steal and a half. That's that's like 3 counters that are slightly mangled, barely. So for one scenario, you need, I think, 23 6.56 Spaniards, and the game comes with 16. It says some of them are garrison units and they cannot be moved, so you could theoretically use some of the guys as garrisons, and you could use your regular German 6.56s as not, or vice versa. But you actually don't even have enough Spaniards. You only have 16 Spaniards 6.56s, so you couldn't even do the 17 garrison units. It's not the end of the world, but presumably, hopefully, the thing that happens is they make the counter sheet assuming that these are going to be the orders of battle, and then the orders of battle get changed after they've already sent the counter sheet to the printers. I don't know if that's the case, but it's not the end of the world. It does not affect the playability, although you will need some more Axis 6.56s for that particular scenario. The only other counters you're going to need are two IE infantry gun 18s, Germans, and then one Pak 38, also German, obviously. So pretty low counter requirements. The big thing, of course, is to have the Russians. I think we've covered all of the components. So now we can get to the fun part, where we get to talk about the scenarios. We've already talked about the historical progression and the amount of scenarios on each map. It's obviously, as you could hear from what counters you need, all infantry. You get S-boats. You get wagons. So if you wanted AFVs and tanks blowing each other up on the steppes of Russia, you'll go elsewhere. But there's a lot of really cool scenarios in here. Just in terms of how many choices you get to make. There's choices about VPs, when to bring out, which VPs to go after, when to bring on reinforcements, which units to set up hidden, where to place rubble. There's some variable reinforcement schedules that aren't, obviously, you don't get to choose, but it's randomized. So there's a lot of replayability going on with these scenarios, and they're mostly short to medium. There's a couple 5-turners, there's 3 6-turners, a 7-turner, and then there's 2 10-turners that do get a little bit bigger. And some of the shorter scenarios get a little bit bigger. They're obviously tough on the sides of the maps. You're limited to how big the scenarios will get. I'll bet there can be quite a few counters on the maps. I would mention that if you want this one for solo play, it may not be the best module for solo play. There's some minor hidden setup for some units, but usually it's like 1 or 2 per scenario, so that's not the end of the world playing it solitaire. But then things like hidden VPs make it rather more difficult. Although you can also randomize it, so and then you'd have to come up with a plan for the Spaniards, or for the side that doesn't have the random VPs, and randomize for them as well how they're gonna deal with it. But it's just something to bear in mind. The scenarios all look very interesting. A lot of action going on very small maps. Like I said, this is a classic scenario, or a classic module. So it's definitely worth looking into if this is the kind of thing you're into. And I think that'll be it. This has been ATSFE Battlefield Walkaround. You can find us on the Discord channel, on atsfe.wordpress.com. Check out our other videos and give us a shout out.